I'm Jonathan Watt with Atara Group International. If you're enjoying our content, please press the like button and subscribe to our channel. We're doing a little history series, and I want to talk today about a group called the Beguines, women who chose God and service to God, but without becoming nuns. When most people imagine religious women in the Middle Ages, they picture nuns living behind monastery walls, taking lifelong vows of poverty and chastity and obedience. However, history holds another remarkable story, one often overlooked and yet profoundly inspiring for today's church, and that's the story we got today, the story of the Beguines. The Beguines were neither married nor cloistered. They were not nuns, yet not quite secular either. They formed one of the most unusual, innovative, and spiritually vibrant movements of the medieval Christian world. And during times of social upheaval and disease even, including the waves of the Black Death, which began in the 14th century, the Beguines often stood on the front lines of compassion and healing and community care. Their story is not only intriguing, but also deeply relevant for modern believers seeking models of faithful, flexible discipleship. Let's explore it a bit together. Who exactly were the Beguines? Let's consider this to start with. The Beguines emerged in the 12th and 13th centuries across what is now Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and France. They were devout Christian women who wanted to serve God wholeheartedly, but without taking the permanent vows and involving the restrictions of monastic life. Unlike nuns, there were some distinctions here. The Beguines did not take lifelong vows, not at all. They could own personal property. They could leave the community freely. They often worked in trades and then donated their earnings to charitable causes. They lived in Beguinehofs, or clusters of homes, forming small spiritual communities. They would devote their lives to prayer, teaching, nursing, weaving, caregiving, and various forms of pastoral service. Their freedom made them radical in an era when a woman's choices were so often limited to marriage or the convent. The Beguines carved a third path, one that allowed economic independence, spiritual commitment, communal living, and simultaneously service, especially to the poor. So, what kinds of things did the Beguines do? Well, because they were not cloistered, they freely responded to community needs with remarkable speed and flexibility. Their work included a variety of activities like nursing and care for the sick. And during the Black Plague and many outbreaks of it that came and went, many Beguines cared for the dying, tending to patients that others understandably feared to approach. Their ministry was courageous and it was sacrificial, and many of them actually died in the course of their service to the sick. That's one of the noteworthy things that they did. Furthermore, there was teaching and spiritual formation activities. Some Beguines, like Hadwich of Brabant and Methchild of Magdeburg, became celebrated writers and mystics. Others taught children. Some mentored young women. Others offered various forms of pastoral care. Supporting the poor was also a very important part of the Beguines' work. They ran hospices. They fed the hungry. They sheltered abandoned children. They offered dignity to people in failing health who were often at the most vulnerable in their lives. Naturally, they did a lot of economic work. Many worked as weavers, embroiderers, textile producers, and the income they gained would support the community with charitable work. They were involved in spiritual leadership, and though not ordained, the Beguines often led prayer gatherings, wrote devotional works, and guided the spiritual lives of many lay people. So the question comes about, what did the church think of them? Did the church approve of them or not? Well, the Beguines lived in a gray area, not fully inside ecclesiastical structures, but not outside of them either. And this ambiguous position brought a combination of admiration and also suspicion. So early on, there was support. Local bishops and clergy often praised their charitable work. Many Beguines lived in harmony with the church, attended Mass daily, engaged in, if you will, the liturgical life. But perhaps understandably, there was growing tension as well. And as the movement grew, concerns started to emerge. Their independence made supervision difficult. Some writings of theirs, of some of them at least, explored mystical theology that challenged established categories. Their lack of permanent vows complicated things relating to canon law. And their spiritual influence, especially over other women, was worrisome to at least some church leaders. So a minority of church leaders criticized them, and especially as they were criticizing clerical corruption, at least some of them were, this brought certainly some tension. So there was some condemnation, but there was also reform. And at the Council of Vienne in 1311 and 12, they were condemned, at least certain Beguines were condemned for theological deviations. Not the whole movement, but individual ones. Many communities continued to thrive, especially in the Low Countries, while others faced pressure to conform increasingly to the establishment. So most Beguines, however, were faithful Christians whose devotion went unquestioned. Tensions arose from their independence more than alleged corruptions or problems with their theology. So, question to ask now is, why does their story matter today? Here we are in the 21st century. Well, the Beguines show that the Holy Spirit often works creatively, raising new forms of discipleship beyond institutional categories. And the Beguines modeled, a variety of excellent things like courageous service, deep spiritual formation, faith that expressed itself through practical care of those who were compromised in some way. It involved some women's leadership, economic and spiritual creativity, and a flexible ministry that allowed quick responses and immediate care as those kinds of needs came up. Seems to me their witness is relevant today as the church navigates cultural changes, community needs that are sometimes unique, and the call to compassionate service, which surely falls along professing Christians. So bringing their story into today's church, definitely worth doing. Now, if your congregation or ministry wants to explore spiritual history, women in the church, community care, the theology of service, the story of Beguines is a powerful and welcome starting point. So our Tara Group International specializes in things like teaching on church history, Bible study, faith formation, leadership development, and whether you're planning a retreat or a women's gathering or some kind of a teaching series, a Tara Group can help your community rediscover the courageous faith of women such as the Beguines. To schedule a workshop or speaking event, visit a Tara Group International and discover how stories like these can enrich your church and its ministry today.